or your favorite podcast player. For the next half an hour, me and my reluctant co-host Lisa Kiner are going to be answering as many. I don't even know what that is. What is a?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get the finger thing right. My camera also makes it like a fisheye thing. I got to get a new one. The casualties
awesome.
of
COVID. Here's how this works. Put all of your questions in the comment section and we will answer as many as we can. Remember, shorter questions absolutely work better. And so you know who we are. We're going to introduce ourselves. Lisa, tell the people who you are.
Hi, my name is Lisa Kiner, and I am the co-host of the Not Crazy podcast on Psych Central. And we'll be here today answering questions from the comments section. And Gabe is the host of our podcast. New episodes every Tuesday. Please check it out at psychcentral.com/notcrazy. Yeah.
I love how when I said tell people who you are, you told people who I was.
I was helping.
Awesome.
I'm helping. You're welcome.
My name is Gabe Howard, and I am the host of the Not Crazy podcast, and I live with bipolar disorder, and I've been a mental health advocate for about 10 years. I believe so firmly in and strongly in peer support, and I really enjoy doing things like this because I feel that people have questions that they want to ask their peers and maybe get advice or help. And that's really what Lisa and I are trying to do for the next half an hour, just to sort of answer basic questions so that people know where to go or have some strategies for talking to doctors, maybe understand their illness a little bit better, maybe understand mental health advocacy or stigma, anything like that is really in our wheelhouse. But sincerely, short questions in the comment section work best. We pop them up on the screen, and Lisa and I debate them just like we debate them like debaters.
Debaters, yeah. We're so clever.
All right, Lisa, are you ready to get started?
I am ready.
All right, so while we're waiting for the question to pop up on the screen, we want to give a huge shout out to Camera. Camera is our producer, behind the scenes person. When things pop up on the screen, like ask short questions, we'll do our best to answer, or our names, or each one of us, Camera is the one doing it. So huge shout out to Camera. Thank you so much for being super awesome. All right, Camera, are you ready?
Thank you, Camera. I think
all right,
she's
going to pop up the first question now.
Wow, she is on today. Okay, Brittany Hansen asks, what's worse, bipolar 1 or 2?
This is one of those things that they're both pretty much exactly the same. I
wouldn't say they're exactly the same.
No. Okay. Look, thank you, Lisa.
Rephrase, Gabe. Rephrase.
Yes. So here is bipolar 1. Bipolar 1 is extreme lows, suicidal depression, all the way to extreme highs, godlike mania. And bipolar 2 is the same low end, suicidal depression. But instead of all the way to complete godlike mania, it stops at hypomania. Now, your question is, which one's worse, bipolar 1 or 2? Now, some people believe that because bipolar 1 goes all the way to mania, that it is worse than bipolar 2. See, this is... I don't like that. I don't like that at all, because the things that interfere with the activities of daily living, the things that mess up your life, it's really sort of irrelevant if there's a higher level or if somebody else has it worse. I think that bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, they have differences for diagnosis and treatment and understanding of your symptoms and learning coping skills, etc. But trying to determine which one's worse, it's a bit like asking which bone is worse to break. I suppose you could sit around and try to figure it out, and you could probably make some compelling arguments, but I think anybody who has broken a bone and experienced that pain, discomfort, and of course treatment, and achieving wellness and working so hard at that would take a pretty dim view at somebody coming along and saying, well, my broken bone is worse. Lisa, your thoughts?
Yeah, I have to agree. Obviously, everything is individualized. And when you say what's worse, well, for who and when and where, there's going to be so many variables. And of course, this is our favorite game, the Suffering Olympics, of who has it worse. everyone is dealing with this in their own way. There is no better or worse. There's no scorekeeper. So I really don't think the question makes a lot of sense. I don't think you really can ask which is better or which is worse. What do you think, Gabe?
I already answered. You went second.
Well, I know, but what do you think of my answer?
No, I agree, but I understand why people want to know. I do think that it's fair, and I think some
people like
folks
to compare
know,
things.
Well, yeah, but I think some people want to know because, for example, like, stage 3 cancer and stage 4 cancer, that shows severity. So I think that some people believe that bipolar 1 and 2 are showing the severity of the bipolar, when actuality, it's showing a different set of symptoms all lining up against each other. So it's just important to understand that. But I think that we have probably talked this to death. Lisa, are you ready to move on to the next question?
Certainly. Next question.
All right, here we go.
Okay. Aaron Austin asked, how do you keep the stupid little things that set you off from setting you off and ruining your day? The Lisa, secret to good mental health.
Lisa, I'm going to give this one to you because I know that this impacts you a lot. A lot of
sometimes.
Things. Yes, everything is sometimes, Lisa.
I'm just trying to have accuracy, Gabe.
You also sleep. But what are your, I think Aaron's question points to coping skills. What coping skills do you use, Lisa, like when you see something on the news that just really gets to you?
Well, the news is a trick question because several years ago, the news started to bother me so much that I had to really limit my access to it. So I don't watch that as much news as I used to. I try to ration that so it doesn't get me so worked up. The same thing you can do with social media. If it's upsetting you, stop looking at it so much. That's been very helpful to me, although it does feel a little bit weird. This is a difficult thing to do. The real question here is how am I achieving a balanced life or having mental stability or just, keeping calm? And that's much easier said than done. I feel like I'm pretty good at this. And I think it's mostly just because, and my mom was always real big on teaching this, that most things don't really matter. In the grand scheme of things, most things don't matter. If it's not going to kill you, you don't really need to worry about it that much. So I think that I personally am pretty good at this. I don't worry too much about small things throughout the day. Most things don't really bother me. But
okay,
obviously,
Lisa, but how? You said that you're good at it. You said that your mom helped you be good at it. You talked about how much you hate the news. What is your specific coping skill?
To take every time you get upset about a small thing, to take it all the way to the end of what is the worst possible thing that could happen. Like, someone has given me the wrong meal at a restaurant. Okay, what is the worst possible thing that could result from this occurrence? And the answer is almost always nothing. Nothing. There's nothing bad that's going to happen in the end. Occasionally, I suppose, if you get really strange, you could get to like the very, very end where I will die in a car crash on my way home. But that almost never happens. So, yeah, I just try to take it to the logical, the absolute extreme. And then upon realizing that said absolute extreme isn't that bad, the thing doesn't bother me that much anymore. What is your coping skill, Gabe?
I'm just trying to figure out how you went from got the wrong meal at a restaurant to dying in a car crash on the way home.
Okay, so you're running.
No,
right,
we're going
to.
What you were trying to explain was chain analysis, and I agree with chain analysis. Lisa's basic point is that sometimes we look at things and we think this is the worst thing that can ever happen. But if we actually back it up to where we started, or we move it forward to where we'll end up, it's not so bad. And I think that's genuinely what you were trying to explain. I don't want to speak for you, Lisa. Is that what you were trying to explain?
I think that's what I successfully explained. I think that is what I said, but
when
apparently
you jumped off onto dying in a car accident on the way home, I think you lost your basic points.
The example I'm going to give is I can't find my keys, which means I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to be running late. And because I'm running late, I'm going to be in a traffic jam that wasn't going to be there otherwise if I'd been moving on time. And because of that, I'm going to be in a car accident. I'm going to die. And the fact that I can't find my keys, well, now I'm dead. So taking it all the way to that far extreme makes you realize how unreasonable that is.
Well, it is, but Where I'm trying to nail you down is I asked you to explain the coping skill, and you didn't explain
That
the
is the
coping
coping
skill.
skill.
That's not the coping skill. You actually made it worse. You ramped up. You said that by using this particular coping skill,
Okay.
you end up with, I'm going to die in a car accident.
No, you
Then
end up
don't use this coping skill at all then.
you end up realizing how incredibly unreasonable that is, and
Well, you
therefore you
left
can
that
back it
out.
off. I
I,
I
I,
I don't think you end up realizing how incredibly unreasonable this fear is, and then you see, okay, this isn't actually going to be that bad. And of course, most things you can't even get there, no matter how hard you try. Most things are just irrelevant.
I feel badly because you're not looking at the camera.
Oh, sorry.
You need
I'm
to like,
sorry. My camera's terrible.
you're doing the whole thing like this.
What? Wait, I am? I don't
Yes.
think that's true.
Apparently, whatever you're looking at is down
Okay.
there on your monitor.
It is on my camera is above my monitor, so that is a problem. Yes.
Move your monitor over whatever you're looking at.
I can't because the camera's on the monitor.
All
I
right.
can't make the camera be in the middle. I need one of those fancy ones like you see the really high-end YouTubers have where the camera's actually in the center of the monitor. Those are
Camera is telling us, and I quote, "You guys are a train wreck. We have 9 questions. Please move on." All right, next
This
question.
is why I don't have access to the typey thing while we're doing this, because I would take that to the logical extreme. Okay, next question. Mandy Shore says, I have ADHD. How can you describe what it is positively?
I guess I'm a little bit confused by like, how do you describe it in a positive way, or do you just want the DSM definition of ADHD?
I think she's trying to say, how does she describe it to people she knows so it doesn't sound so bad? That's my theory.
Okay, well, Lisa, do you have any thoughts on this? I myself do not live with ADHD.
I don't either.
I have some theories of things to suggest, but I don't want to.
Okay. Let's hear them. What are those theories, Gabe? Tell us more.
Yes. Hang on a second. I love the comments in the sections where they're saying that we're both crazy and that we're both mental. We did say at the top of the show that we both do, in fact, live with mental illness. So, yeah, a little bit on the nose there. But to answer the question, so ADHD is attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. And as far as describing it positively, I would say that you have trouble paying attention to things. You often have trouble controlling your excitement levels, or, in this case, hyperactivity, and that it's a disorder that you're under treatment for. To back it down and to make it a little less scary, you could explain to people that, look, I have been diagnosed with this. I am aware of it. I am managing it as best as I can, but sometimes I do have trouble paying attention, and sometimes I am hyper, which is outside of my control. And I think that is very powerful. The final thing that I'll say is then open it up for questions. So often we don't want to answer questions about our illnesses. And I always find that a lost opportunity because, unfortunately, I live with bipolar disorder, and a lot of people don't I understand that a lot of people with bipolar disorder don't understand it. And while I do hate that living with bipolar disorder, have also been dubbed in my family, et cetera, a spokesperson for the illness among my friends and family, I do take this role seriously. So when somebody says, oh my God, you have bipolar disorder, what is that? I do see it as a positive outcome for me to discuss what my life is like with bipolar disorder and make them an ally, a friend, or somebody who is more understanding. Lisa, do you have anything to add? Or we're like 9 questions back up and we have 15 minutes left. So we're already on the speed round.
I guess I don't have anything to add then. I thought that was a very good answer, Gabe, and I thought that was a good answer, and I don't have anything to add. Next question. All right. Don't you have to do the or we won't get a question? There you go. Okay. All right. Sarah asks, how do you handle a spouse that refuses to go to therapy but continues to struggle with depression?
So this is interesting, Lisa. You were the spouse. Now I don't think I refused or anything, but
no, never did.
I am curious as to how would you have handled it if I would have refused?
Well, you need to decide how far you're willing to go. How big of a deal is this to you? Is this a deal breaker? Are you actually thinking to yourself, look, if this doesn't get resolved, if this doesn't get fixed, I'm leaving? That this is something that must be done or I am out of here? In which case, go ahead and give an ultimatum. But of course, you can only do that if you're actually willing to follow through with it. And that is the nuclear option. You don't really have anywhere to go from that one. If you want to start up, the thing I always try to do with people is to ask it as a personal favor. Look, I understand that you don't think that you need this. You don't want to go to therapy. You don't feel like this is a big deal, but it would make me feel better. Do this as a favor to me. This isn't about you. Yeah. You don't have depression, whatever. Do this as a favor to me. Do this as a personal favor for me. Hey, you do this and I'll do the dishes for the rest of the week, whatever. And I found that really works really well. If you can frame it as something this person is doing for you rather than something that you want them to do on their own behalf or that you want them to do for themselves.
Lisa, I just want to build on that a little bit, that it's a partnership, right? It doesn't matter if you have mental health issues, mental illness, bipolar, depression, or anything. Nobody likes it as an adult when another adult walks up to them and says, you need to do X. It doesn't work. You got to build that partnership. You have to say, I'm worried about you and I've noticed, or how do you feel about X, or what are your thoughts on this? Or, when you say they have depression, that's sort of a conclusion. What are the things that you see that lead you to that conclusion? Like, I've noticed that you haven't left your room in a while. Is everything okay? They will probably say yes. Can I ask why you've stopped coming out to game night on Tuesday? I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Just keep asking those open-ended questions. Don't say, hey, you're depressed, you don't leave your room, you skipped card night, you need to do something about that. Even if you say that in a nice tone, ordering somebody to do something about that, it doesn't often work. I do agree with Lisa on the spouse thing that, please do it for me. I love you very much and I'm scared and I would like you to go for me and I will go with you. These things help a lot. The final thing that I want to say is, if they're not listening to you, maybe try to get an ally. Be very careful getting an ally, especially in the case of a spouse, but, talk to their parents, talk to a good family friend, talk to a sibling, somebody that they're close to, and say, hey, I'm really worried about Larry. Here's what I've noticed with Larry, and Larry's not listening to me. He's completely shut down. Would you be willing to talk to them? And that person can sort of start from scratch, and there's probably not the animosity there. Unfortunately, a lot of times these things devolve into a lot of, fighting and yelling. And by the time you try this method, they're not willing to listening to it. So swapping out people is often very helpful. All right. Ready, camera, for the next question?
I'm sure that she is. All right. When someone commits a crime and media refer to that person as having a mental illness, is there a better word to describe that type of mental illness versus the mental illness some battle on the daily?
So this is... Lisa and I debate this all the time because
comes up a lot.
Yeah, it really does. Because somebody said, well, you have to be mentally ill in order to do this. But this just breaks down so quickly. I mean, in World War II, was the entire Nazi army mentally ill? Where does this end? What about soldiers or police officers that have to react in the line of duty? They have their reasons. The reasons might not be anything that we understand or even agree with, but that doesn't point to a mental illness. And this is very problematic for people who live with mental illness. The media does not do us a lot of favors, unfortunately, because that is their general belief as well, that anybody who does something unusual must be mentally ill. The reality is doing something unusual can be driven by a lot of different factors. It can be driven by stress. It can be driven by anger. It can be driven by desperation, and it can be driven by evil. People who are evil are not necessarily mentally ill. And could you imagine if that was true, that anybody who did anything evil was immediately mentally ill? I mean, why do we have people in prison? Everybody who broke the law, they're just mentally ill. It doesn't hold up when you stop and think about it, but the media really likes this narrative. It helps keep people safe. Just avoid all the crazy people and bad things won't happen to you.
Well, I need to interrupt.
Is sort of the message.
It doesn't actually help to keep people safe. It makes people feel as if they are safe because it's not actually keeping anybody safe. I'm sorry. Go ahead after that.
No. Thank you, Lisa, for clarifying it, because I wanted to be very, very clear on this. The media likes the narrative, and in order to keep it up, they start declaring everything mental illness. This person doesn't have a mental health diagnosis. This person's never been treated for mental illness. This person has never shown any symptoms of mental illness, but they'll talk to a neighbor who says, I always thought they were off. Boom, mental illness. This person went to marriage counseling 20 years before, and they and they're like, look, saw a therapist, mentally ill. It's tough. It's really, really tough. The bottom line is, while there certainly could be a mental illness needs to be diagnosed by a doctor in treatment, not based on one act that was reported on the national news. Nobody is qualified to be an armchair psychologist, including psychologists. They can't just watch the news and start diagnosing people. So I don't know how the anchors on TV with no psychology training are qualified to declare that these people are mentally ill. So you asked, is there a better word? The better word is just to stick to the facts. And the fact is, we don't know anything about that person's mental health status.
The thing that
All
always
right, you ready for the next question, Lisa?
Absolutely. Oh, no, that's
no,
okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say that it has become a self-defining prophecy that, well, you have to be mentally ill to have committed that type of crime, don't you? And the example that really did it for me was the thing that you said, Gabe. You told me that a few years ago, which was, well, what about in World War II? Was every single Nazi mentally ill? I mean, don't you have to be mentally ill to do something so horrible? And I thought, wow, that is a really good point. Why have we decided that this behavior is just automatically mental illness? And how incredibly stigmatizing is that? That this behavior is automatically mental illness? I think it's just part and parcel of the regular stigma surrounding mental illness that pervades our society. And you are the one who pointed that out to me, Gabe. So that was very helpful.
That'll be $500. All right, here we go.
Okay. Michelle Robertson asks, can you share a tip to how you can learn to accept where you are with your illness at a given time?
Lisa, you did a really good job of explaining a concept called radical acceptance a few weeks ago. And okay. I think that that's really the best tip. And since I botched the explanation last time so horrifically, I'm just going to pass it right over to you.
Well, I don't know that this is the dictionary definition of radical acceptance, but my version of it is, this is where you are. The whole concept of you can't change the past, you can only change the future. You can only go forward. And that doesn't mean that you're in a good place now, or everything that was supposed to happen happened, or everything happens for a reason. It doesn't mean any of that, because I don't believe in any of that. It's just an acceptance of, this is where I am and I cannot change the past. And the only control that I do have is what happens going forward. And I want to have as much control as possible. Therefore, I'm going to grab that control and do what I can. Kind of related, I think about this quite a bit with members of my family who suffered from untreated mental illness for long periods and never got care. And just, what a waste. With just however many years, a whole lifetime wasted. And so that's always been a big motivator for me. This idea that we have the only resource you can't get back is time. Theoretically, I could make more money. I could buy a new house. I could meet a man. I could have kids, but I can't get back time. I can't get back that time that's already gone. So that's always been very helpful to me. Just this idea that all we have control over is what happens going forward, and I need to do the absolute best job I can on that, because you can't change the past. Gabe?
Yes, Lisa, thank you so much. All right, are we ready for the next question?
Okay. All right. Rick Salazar asks, touch on autoimmune and mental disease connection.
I am not...
not a doctor.
Yeah. Rick, I apologize, but I'd rather tell you that I don't know. Because honestly, I'm really not sure. Lisa, I know that you understand a lot more about physical health and its connection to
still
mental health.
Still not a doctor. Well,
I know you're not a doctor.
All I would say is that obviously anything that influences your health influences your mood. So, if you have a chronic autoimmune disease or any chronic disease, I think it's quite normal and even expected that you're going to struggle with depression or anxiety or maybe other forms of mental illness, or if you already had mental illness, that this is just going to make everything worse. But in terms of a more direct connection, I'm unfortunately, I just don't have any information about that. But again,
all right, ready for the next question?
Absolutely. All right, Sage asks, I have severe PTSD. How can I overcome it or make it manageable?
These are hard questions this week. I think Camera must be mad at us.
Well, some of them just don't have answers,
So post-traumatic stress disorder. So overcoming it and making it manageable. I this is a this is a difficult thing.
I don't know that there is a pat answer or even an answer. I mean, if you had the if anyone actually had a one size one shot one size fits all answer to how do you overcome it and making it manageable, oh my goodness, can you imagine? We've just cured mental illness. The millions would just be coming in. So I would say that you just do the best that you can.
Well, but
And
let's
there's
talk about
certainly
some. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, obviously, there's lots of treatments and therapies and options out there. You know, you have medication, you have therapy, you have group therapy, support groups. There's, DBT. There's all sorts of options, but I don't think there is one blatant answer of how exactly you do this. Everyone is different.
I think that what I started to say, and I kept equivocating on. Thank you, Lisa, for jumping in. Was I do think that PTSD is one of those things that you're probably not going to be able to take care of on your own. You will need to work with a qualified therapist who specializes in PTSD, and I sincerely think this is one of those things that you can't tackle, attack, and cure on your own to make it more manageable and overcome it. Much in the same way with my bipolar disorder, I could work as hard as I absolutely could, but if I wouldn't have gotten therapy and gone to peer support groups and talked to other people with bipolar disorder and learned coping skills from both trained professionals and peer supports, and on and on and on, it would have been very difficult for me to move forward. And in fact, I feel confident in saying that it would have been impossible for me to learn how to manage bipolar disorder 100% on my own. I really encourage you to go to therapy or join a PTSD support group, or both. It's not one or the other. All right, are we ready for the next question?
I am ready for the next question.
Yay!
What suggestions do you have for people with mental health issues that have been turned down several times from a potentially good career?
This is one of the ones that always makes me like really sad, because I was fired from my job, and I was good at that job. I had been with this company for 5 years. I was the youngest person they ever hired. I had worked my way up in this particular industry, literally from the bottom, and it was difficult. It was very difficult, and it felt well, frankly, like a kick in the gut. I wish that I had a suggestion that said, "Hey, this is perfect. This will work." I don't. It sort of becomes one of those issues where you have to work really, really hard to break through. Lisa always describes it like being a woman in the workplace, where you have to work twice as hard to get half as much. And again, I've never been a woman in the workplace, but that analogy does speak to me, because to get other jobs, people had to take the risk of hiring somebody with a mental health issue, and I had to show them how good I was. So I pulled out all the stops. I made sure that my resume was good, my certifications were up to date. I made sure to wear a suit and tie, show up early, just grasp that handshake, look them in the eyes, ask them what they need, get impressive references, volunteer to make sure I had volunteer references, try to get introductions from a friend of a friend, because that seems to help if somebody could vouch for me. And those were the methods that I used. And I don't want to scare you off, but it was very difficult. I was very resentful. I was very angry, and it took a long time. It took several years to go from that job to my next good job. And I was very angry about that. So one of the tips that I have is to get therapy for that resentment and anger, because you don't want it to eat you from the inside. Unfortunately, it's back to like Lisa was describing about radical acceptance. I can't go backwards. I can only move forward. And that's how I handled it. But I do want to point out that in addition to doing all of those things, I was furious. I was just very angry. Take a page from my book and don't be angry.
That's sure. Why not? I'll just not be angry. No problem. That's
Well,
a lot easier said than done.
you remember at the time, Lisa,
I
I
do.
told you all of these things that I was doing, and you were like, well, that's smart. You're being very smart. And you were proud of me for doing those things. And I
Mhm.
appreciate that pride. I really,
Absolutely.
really do. But I was angry at the fact that I had to do them. And it was somewhat helpful that you explained that this is the reality for a lot of people based on their gender, their race, their sexual orientation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that, being a white middle class guy, it really didn't serve me well to deal with this discrimination. That said, it's not fair for me, them, anybody. And I was not used to that. If I could do one thing over again, it would have been to address that anger, because it hurt me a lot, and it hurt my relationships.
Yeah.
So
it got old hearing how angry you were all the time. Yeah. Because there's nowhere to go with that. Where do you put those feelings? It was very difficult.
Yeah. All right, Lisa, wait, we're at 4. We're done. We have to go.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Hey,
See,
Lisa, high five.
One of these days. Okay. High five.
No, I'm going forward.
Oh, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would we go forward? Oh, all right. Well, if you would have told me we're going forward, I knew how to do that from the beginning. I wouldn't have had to practice.
Listen up, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. It was a quick half hour. We really, really appreciate it. We hope you got something out of it. We hope you learned from it. Lisa and I love it when we don't agree, because it gives you the opportunity to see both sides of the issue. If you want to hear more of our voice but not see our faces, you can check out the Not Crazy podcast on psychcentral.com/notcrazy. Or, of course, your favorite podcast player. My name is Gabe Howard. This is Lisa Kiner, and we will see everybody in, I think, October 27th, right?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
We're going to just go with yes.
They could go to the podcast every Tuesday.
Or you could, there's a whole, if you go to the podcast player, there's tons of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we will see everybody in a couple of weeks.